I don't want to tell you guys what a dumbass I was. My ego does not want to tell you this simple mistake almost cost me my life and put my wife's life at risk. But we're telling you this so that hopefully it'll help you stop and be like, wow, this is something we need to consider. Or everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I really don't want to tell you this story. For a couple reasons. One, I don't want to tell you the story because I really wish we didn't have this story to tell. And two, I don't want to tell you the story because the main problem was that I messed up and that it became a very bad situation very quickly. And it was my mistake entirely. So, I want to start out by saying, if you haven't seen our channel or you're just coming on this video unrelated to our sailing channel, my name's James. This is Camille. And we need to start this conversation by stating that I hold a master's license with the U.S. Coast Guard. I have over 5,000 miles of passage making just in like ocean passage. And we are both advanced certified scuba divers. And Camille was a lifeguard when she was a teenager, so she's trained in the lifeguard techniques of rescue and everything. So everything that we're about to talk about, none of it has to do with us being uneducated or unprepared. It all boils down to a simple mistake that very nearly turned deadly. We sailed from Los Angeles Harbor to the Channel Islands, and there's already a couple episodes out showing the first part of our trip. We sailed from Santa Rosa Island, and the wind, it had been blowing in the anchorage we had previously been in, which was Johnson's Lee on Santa Rosa Island. It had been blowing 25 to 30 knots for 2 days straight.
Yeah, like howling.
Crazy winds. And the wind events were sort of dying. They're forecast to die down. So we'd been downloading weather updates. And so we hadn't been on shore for like 4 days because of the gnarly winds. We had been under anchor and just trapped on the boat. And Camille never complained, so she hadn't complained about it, but I felt bad. I was like, we should try to get ashore, because I had a feeling we might leave the next morning, because we got held up a day, so our timing was a little off.
It was also really pretty there. There were like
it was really
very
pretty.
Dramatic sand dunes, and the beaches were really it was very like stark.
Yeah, and lots of sand to land on, not a lot of rocks and everything. And so when we got there and we got everything in order, I was like, we're gonna go ashore. And Camille looked at me, she's like, it's gonna get dark soon. I was like, well, it's no big deal. Like, we have an anchor light. And at Catalina, we come back to the boat in the dark all the time. I was like, you know. And it was blowing like 10 knots due to like a venturi, or like a downslope effect where we were. Maybe a little more, 10 to 12. And that is where I messed up. I was like rushing to try to get us ashore to beat daylight, which is, unless it's a place that's very calm and very mellow and everything's chill.
Or you know it really well.
Then it's like, that's a different thing. But that's where it began. That is where everything began. So I hurried. I got the outboard on the dinghy. I got the fuel tank on. Made sure that our keep these throwable PFD seats in the dinghy. And I was like, okay, let's get to shore. I was like, it's going to be a wet ride, but... And so, I did have the sense enough to, drive the dinghy into the wind so that it would be easier coming back. As best I could. There were a bunch of rocks and a big seal rookery on shore. So we drove as close to the wind as we could. As soon as we got in the dinghy, 10 feet from the boat, we both got completely soaked. Soaked. And at that point, we should have turned around and went back to the boat. And we're like, well, we're already out, so let's just, we're already soaked, so let's just go ashore. And we had been watching the beach. Mm-hmm. And there were no breakers on the beach. I don't cowboy with breakers ever. If it's a rough landing, I just don't go ashore there, or I land somewhere else. So we had watched, and everything was gentle waves cruising up the sand beach. And there were big breakers on the other beach, which in the book we read, it said, only land at this one spot, which is where we are heading for. So we were just getting soaked with this wind hammering us.
And probably a little eager to get on land, because of that.
Exactly. So we're cruising with our little outboard, which I don't entirely trust. A little two-stroke, 1973 Johnson outboard. And we get right up to the coast, and a wave breaks beneath us. And me and Camille looked at each other and we're like, oh shit.
And I was in the front and I turned around and I went, oh.
And then we looked back and see a big wave behind us. And I gunned it, trying to hoping we could surf it in.
But the last one that we had seen started pulling
It was
in.
stopped us, basically.
Yeah.
And that's the pit of my stomach is I think about that wave cresting under us, and we knew that we were done for. And that second wave pitch pulled us, and when I just remember looking back and the boat flipping end over end, and when I went under, I grabbed rocks, kept my head off the rocks, and Camille was thrown into the sand forward, and then we both popped up. The dinghy was upside down, and we popped up at the same time and got out of the surf. Camille had the bag and my shoe. I don't know. She caught everything somehow.
I had everything.
So,
I don't really know what happened. Later on, afterward, I realized I was I probably had a half pound of sand in all of
And I had no sand.
He had no
but
sand.
she was covered in sand inside all of her clothing. So we dragged the dinghy up and assessed the situation. And at this point, the sun had already, it was there was that shadow from the mountains to where it was already creeping. So we were already in the shade. We were soaked head to toe. The wind is howling. And San Miguel has no facilities whatsoever. There's supposedly a ranger outpost somewhere, but we don't know if there was a ranger actually stationed on the island.
But it's also not visible from the anchorage.
Not at all. You can't even see a trail from the anchorage. So, and with the pandemic, we don't know if there is even a ranger out there right now. We have no idea. But we instantly were like, we got to figure out how to get back to the boat. And I turn around and I'm like, oh no, our oars washed away. So we have oars that screw onto the dinghy. And then I instantly realized they didn't wash away. In the rush to get off the boat to get to shore, I forgot to put them on the dinghy.
Because we had taken them off because the winds were so high at the last anchorage that we had to, because the dinghy was in the water, it was too windy to put it on deck.
Yeah.
So we took the oars off in order to put the dinghy at the rear of the boat to just kind of fly.
Because it was becoming airborne. That's how bad the winds were.
And we didn't, the oars would have been just willy-nilly, so we took them off.
And normally when the dinghy's in the water, we never take the oars off. But it's still that was my big mistake, was that I didn't go down a checklist on the dinghy of what all was there. And the other thing is we don't have a like an outboard emergency kit on the dinghy, which we will from now on. There'll be a spare spark plug and like all the stuff to dry out the engine and everything, because the engine was soaked and was not starting, and the fuel may have had salt water in it anyway, so we may have been hosed no matter what, because we took a lot of water. Yeah, so we tried to get started, didn't work. We had no oars. It's getting dark. We're soaked, and we're like, the only option that we saw that was logical was that we were going to try to position the dinghy as downwind as possible of the boat and get it through the brakes, which we were nervous about. And the brakes, those big brakes were only happening about every seventh.
Yeah, we stood there and watched. And
so it was like 7 small sets and then 2 big waves, 2 breakers.
How far do you think the Tritea was from the land?
Pretty far.
Yeah, I'm just
I
trying to
have
remember.
no idea. I really don't know, but it was pretty far. We were anchored. We had at least 200 feet of rode out, and I know we were anchored at. I think we dropped our anchor at least 500 feet from shore, and it was at its full extent because of the wind. I don't know. It was far out there, but it doesn't matter if it's 100 feet. If you're in gnarly winds that are working against you and freezing cold water and fully clothed, so
and the wind started to pick up.
Yeah,
too.
And because of the geographic feature of that anchorage, it turned out the closer we got to the boat, the higher the winds raised. So we're like, okay, we watched the surf. We pushed out. Camille got in. I got us out. I kicked us out past and walked us out past the breakers. And then we were kicking, and then we ended up having to turn the boat sideways, and both of us laid on the side of it and kicked. And we got really close.
Like twin engine style.
Yeah. We got very close to Tritea.
We got pretty close. But the thing about it is, if we weren't able to position the dinghy exactly where we wanted when we launched.
Yeah.
Because there was a big bunch of rocks.
Huge rocks.
And then on the other side of it were giant elephant seals, all like battling in the shallows.
Sure.
Like
that could have been bad. Like if we had turned our backs to them to try to get through the breakers and they had to, come at us or something.
I don't think that they were going to attack us, but there were just so many big ones right there that just walking into their zone seemed like a terrible idea.
Especially when we were in distress or whatever.
Yeah.
So, we get the dinghy in the water. We're kicking for our lives. We get to a certain point where we're parallel with the boat. And that's the other thing, is the boat was yawing really bad. So she would come when we Tritea would. So when we got the dinghy kind of as close as we could, then it starts moving away. I was like, we have to swim for it. And we grabbed the cushions, we left our bag, and the bag, we had a North Face like waterproof bag that had our GoPro, had my iPhone, had both of our new hiking boots in it, our little scorpion thing, hats.
I think we lost both our hats in the tumble. Or I did.
Oh yeah, but either way, it's like we when we abandoned the dinghy, we lost the dinghy, the outboard, the fuel tank, and the bag full of all of our gear. But we were swimming for our lives at this point because the winds were insane. So we start swimming with our little PFDs, fully clothed, and I had on baggy Levi's, so I was having a real hard time. Camille's a much better swimmer than me, so she didn't seem to have much trouble. She got to the boat kind of quick. She was actually watching me, and I was like, get to the boat.
He kept saying go, and I was watching, as I was watching you, I could see that you were struggling.
I was really struggling.
Couldn't leave. I wasn't going to leave you behind, so I didn't have any problem swimming it. I think it's because I bike so much also.
Yeah, she bikes like, 70 miles at a time.
But I think just the...
But you also had leggings on, so you didn't have baggy pants on, which helps. But you are a much better swimmer than I.
But yeah, I was able to make it to the boat much quicker, but I didn't want to try to get up into the boat because he was struggling in this way where I wanted to be able to swim out to him and lift him up if he needed it.
Yeah. And the problem was like being blown back. And I knew I needed to get some of my clothes off to help me swim, but I was too scared to stop swimming to take them off, afraid I would blow too far away because the winds were that strong. And so every time
it was blowing really hard.
And every time I got close to the boat, it would yaw away from me. I would get within 12 feet of Camille, and then the boat would... Either I would blow away from the boat, or it would blow away from me. I have no idea. Or a combination of the two. But it was like I got close once, and then I kind of got behind the boat. That's when I was starting to get blown. Kind of... I either would have hit like the furthest rocks, the farthest point on the island, had I just kept blowing, or I'd have blown out into the channel. We have no idea. But I started like really getting scared because I just couldn't make it. And then Camille got the jib sheet off the boat that was on the side deck.
Well, yeah, when I realized there was like a certain point where I was like, oh, he's swimming, he's just being pushed by the wind, like he'll make it. And then he started to say he was going to pass out.
And I was yelling, and I started yelling, help.
And when he yelled help, it was actually the only point that I was truly, like, that I was actually scared, because I felt so comfortable with the swim. I was like, not comfortable, but like, I didn't feel worried about this swimming part, that when he said help, I was like, oh fuck, I've got to do something else.
Yeah.
So I went around to the other, I had to swim to the other side of the boat, and where we had gotten off, where the gate was open, the jib sheet was there, and I pulled it off and swam out until I was at the end of it.
Yeah. And I was having trouble like swimming because I had my cushion. I was terrified of it. I knew if I lost my cushion, I was dead. But I was like unbuttoning my pants, and then they were around my knees for a while, and I'm trying to kick them off, but I couldn't stop swimming because I knew that I would be blown away. And finally I got my pants off, and that is the only point of which, it was a combination of that. I got my pants off, Camille was fully extended, reaching for me, and then the boat yawed back and like blocked me from the wind for the shortest amount of time, allowing me to make that distance. And then right as Camille grabbed my hand, the boat yawed back and we hit the full force of the wind again. And it was like, you know, she held me, got me in, she gave me a part of the line, and then we got back to the boat. And we held there for a second, and then she was having trouble getting on, totally gassed out. We have pretty low freeboard, so that benefits us a lot.
But we had swam so hard, and had been, and we were really, it was cold. Like, the water didn't seem insanely cold, but it was leaching out all our heat.
For sure. Yeah, I don't remember being cold in the water at all, but also we were working so hard.
Yeah, but so since I had got him, he was there, he was hanging on, and he was saying he was going to pass out again, and
yeah, I kept getting tunnel vision.
So I made a hoop. I made a loop knot in the jib sheet so I could put my foot into it and push up, and I got to about here. And I
put my hand between her legs and grabbed it so she could step on my bicep, and just stepped herself onto the boat. I knew once I had a hold of the boat I was okay, but yeah. And then Camille got up in the cockpit, and
I was just ready to like Hulk out and pull him up by his clothes, because he was saying he was gonna pass out, and I was just like, I just got to get him up onto the boat.
Yeah.
But he was like,
she asked me, she was like, what do you want me to do? And I was like, I took the jib sheet and I wrapped it around my back, and I gave her the other end. I told her to get the winch handle, and we hooked up the jib sheet to the winch and through the self-tailer. Thank you, Noah. Through the self-tailer, and then she winched me up tight to the boat. So then I was secure, and then we slacked it a little bit. I got it underneath my ass, and then she just winched me up until I could pull myself on board. And then once we get on board, what did I look like?
He looked dead. I mean, like, from the point where he yelled, and I mean, he was like getting white and also blue. He looked like a corpse, and also in shock.
Yeah.
But I was like shaking violently, But I was also just like full of adrenaline, so I like ripped off all my wet clothes, and he like kind of came in.
I staggered down and kind of fell on the steps, and she was like, "Take your clothes off," and I couldn't lift my arms, and my feet were numb.
He said he couldn't.
I couldn't
was
move
like, fuck,
really.
So I ripped all his.
She ripped my clothes off. And then I knew where some emergency blankets were.
He was really obsessed with the emergency blankets.
It worked out. They're they
did.
do a job, that specific job.
I know, but you were like, because you weren't making sense sometimes, but then your brain would like click
and I
in
couldn't
and be like,
speak very well. My jaws were kind of locked.
He was doing this weird thing with his mouth.
So I couldn't open my mouth to speak very well. And I wasn't shaking at all. And then Camille was shaking violently. We dried off a little. We got in the V-berth. I covered up with the emergency blanket.
Like shivering.
And we were laying there bundled up under everything. And I was laying perfectly still.
Which was the scary part. Because you shiver, your body's trying to make you warm. And my body was like, it was very like violent shivering. And he was just laying there like he was dead. And he kept saying that he wanted to go to sleep. And I was like,
and I knew, even laying there, like I had all my senses about me. And I was like, not shaking is a very bad sign. And I knew that I was just in shock. But I was like, very bad sign. But yeah, she was like, kept telling me, you can't go to sleep. Do not go to sleep.
What did you say?
And I was like, I don't have a concussion.
And then
she's like, do not, I don't know what I say.
You said, when we get back, I'm going to look up on the internet that I can go to sleep when I have hypothermia.
Yeah. That was the thing. And we don't have internet yet, but once we get the internet, I'm going to be highly versed on shock so that I can argue with her more efficiently and from an educated standpoint. Next time I'm in shock, I get to go to sleep or don't. We'll find out once we get internet. But we laid there for a long time. And then I started shivering really bad, which was a good sign. We were like, okay, that's good. She made me stay awake the whole time. I desperately wanted to sleep. And eventually we were like, I was like warm enough that I had enough motor skills. I bundled up with some clothes, went and put our rocker stopper out because it was pretty rough. The boat was like pretty rough. And then came back in and yeah. That was our terrible lesson that we learned. Do not rush ashore, ever. And we'll also never be messing around with dinghy excursions in any high wind unless it's absolutely necessary or an emergency. No mas.
No mas.
Terrible. And we lost so much gear and our ride ashore, so, and then we went to sleep at like 8 a.m.
Yeah, I like made us some miso.
A bit of like salt water in my lungs, and I'd swallowed enough salt water. I wasn't feeling great. And went to sleep at like 8 p.m. And I woke up at like 3, wide awake, stressed out, upset. I kept replaying everything in my head, how stupid it was. And just couldn't get out of my head. So I came out here and read for like an hour and a half. And then went back to bed and we slept till the morning. But in the morning we did like a recon. Because that was like the way the wind was blowing. And that was the other thing, is the way the wind was blowing, the shape of the bay, I was like, if we don't make it to the boat, it should blow us onto that other shore. And I do believe that would have been the case. So I was certain that the dinghy was like up on shore after high tide, and hopefully that the outboard had like used as an anchor. I was pretty certain that we were going to find the dinghy, just because it's a big, huge, like horseshoe-shaped bay. And the way the wind was pointing, I would have never, if it had been blowing directly offshore, I would have been like, we're not doing that. We'll spend the night on shore. But that was a bummer. And another part of the lesson is like the next morning, we got up, I popped my head out, 0 knots of wind. No surf on the beach. It would have been like a gorgeous landing after a nice night's sleep, go for a hike, everything would have been awesome.
Go see the seals.
You know?
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
really good, I mean, not good, stressful, important reminder that, um, like you can't be casual about shit,
Yeah.
especially, um, especially so far out. But like one of the most disturbing parts about the entire experience was that there were 3 other boats in the anchorage, and they were not that far, but the wind was so loud that no amount of shouting,
Yeah.
they would have had to have been on their deck, like incidentally for some reason, to even maybe see what was going on to help. But that's why it's one of the reasons I was like, we're not gonna die.
Yeah.
There's people right here.
And they were pretty close too. They were anchored not far
Yeah.
from us.
But
2 fishing boats and a sailboat.
Yeah.
Um,
It just seemed like extra surreal that
Yeah.
there were other boats
Very
just
strange.
in that anchorage.
So now let's talk about, and a lot of this is like hindsight, but now we've started talking about like if that had happened with those other boats. I think the best case scenario, if I had not made it to the boat and started blowing across the bay, would have been like for Camille to like blast the horn a bunch and try to get in touch with one of those fishing boats, because those dudes could have got to me real quick. Yeah. Or call them on the radio, VHF, on, you know. And if that wasn't the case,
my other idea was to just cut the anchor line and
yeah,
see if I could.
because she couldn't have gotten the
Go
anchor
get
up
him.
by herself in those winds in a short time
It would
period.
have just taken too much time, and he was
Yeah.
moving far enough away
Yeah.
at a certain pace that.
And we can get another anchor rode and anchor, like, you know. So that's probably, I don't know that you would have, in the moment, I don't know that you'd have thought to try to alert the other boats. You probably would have just thought, well, I got to deal with this.
And my adrenaline was so crazy, I would have been like.
Yeah, because Camille's good at driving the boat. She knows how to drive the boat. So, you know, that's probably, and we have a brand new knife that we just bought that I pointed out. Very sharp knife hanging in one spot that never gets used for anything but emergencies. So she could have easily cut the road with that. We have rope rode. Had we had all chain, it wouldn't have been so easy for her. She would have had to pay it out to the end of the, you know, the rope rode and cut it. So, but yeah. And we're definitely like started talking to, especially after that incident. I was, you know, telling her certain things. I was like, had she got me on board and I was unconscious, like she needs to start thinking about all the things I think about if she's like trying to for us to leave and get to the mainland. I'm like, you know, you got to check your diesel fuel, make sure there's fuel. I'm going to teach her how to start the engine. Actually, when we get back, I'm going to wire it up, because to start our engine, if it runs out of fuel, you need to crack the injectors. Someone needs to hit the start button until diesel shoots out, and then crank down the injectors. So I'm definitely going to wire up a button inside the engine bay so that someone can do that from the engine. So if you're by yourself and you don't have someone to push the button, you can do that from inside. Because just priming it with the bulb does not start this engine, because it doesn't get it past the fuel lifter pump. So it's brought up a lot of good safety conversations.
Yeah.
Yeah. It also, like, we realized we need, we need a reliable outboard engine. We have to replace it now anyway. We need a reliable outboard engine that we can trust. But even if you get swamped like that, it's not going to do any good. You know what I mean? It's like, if you get it underwater, then it's on you. But we will have that emergency kit, and we'll both know how to use it to try to get the engine started. And we'll make sure that there'll be a checklist before we get in the dinghy ever again to go ashore. We'll be like, here, here, here. Those are the things that have to be in this dinghy.
Yeah.
The other thing is the ladder will always be down if we're not on the boat. We have a little swim ladder that you can tie off the side. That will always be down.
And that's the thing, is like, I've been saying that I need to.
You bought a pull-up bar so that you could practice doing pull-ups.
Yeah, do pull-ups so I can be able to really haul myself up on deck with ease. But once you've been swimming for an extended period of time, you're really cold, you are stressed out, like you don't have the strength that you you usually do.
Yeah,
So,
totally.
but you've also been talking about, both of us have been talking about swimming more because
we've been talking about it a lot. We're like, we need
the,
to start swim training without fins because we swim
Yeah.
so much with fins that you get relaxed. You're like, this is easy.
Yeah, and that's, I think, one of the. I was really surprised that he was so far behind me at one point when we had ditched the dinghy, and we were like, swim to the boat, and I was like, swim to the boat, and I turned around and I was like, oh my god, where is he? And I just could see him.
Yeah.
Bobbing.
I'm not like, I'm not a great swimmer. I can swim for sure, but with like Levi's on, a t-shirt, a thick hoodie, and a windbreaker on with a hood, it's even harder to swim efficiently. and I was keeping the cushion under one arm, so I was like, and like she said, I was like also in panic mode, so I wasn't even being efficient as I could. So, but definitely I need to be better at swimming. But there were a lot of aspects.
Yeah.
It's hard for anyone to swim fully clothed.
No,
That's
totally.
a known fact.
I just think because we spend so much time in the water in our wetsuits with fins, with snorkels, that spending time just with no fins
Yeah.
and no snorkels and swimming, that, and practice. Like, I remember in lifeguarding, I was telling James that we used to have to train treading water with our arms above our heads, or treading water with our shoulders out of the water, and it's just you build up strength and you get used to it, and also
and confidence, I would imagine.
Yeah, confidence, and not panicking.
Yeah.
And making your movements actually less efficient and more tiresome for you when you need to reserve your energy and be able to make it to where you're going.
The key factor for the whole thing for me was the wind. The wind was really, if it hadn't have been the wind, it would have been like no problem. Even with all the clothes on, it would have been annoying.
The wind was really strong.
But to be like fighting, swimming as hard as I could in those circumstances and not moving at all, I'm like, what else am I supposed to do? I don't know what to do. You know what I mean? I'm just sitting still, and the boat is moving away from me as it yawls. So that was like, and then it psychologically gets in your head too.
Yeah.
But yeah, one of the big lessons I've taken away from this whole thing is that if you're a sailor, you should always marry a lifeguard. That's my new motto. You know what I mean? So, and again, I don't want to tell you guys what a dumbass I was. My ego does not want to tell you this simple mistake almost cost me my life and put my wife's life at risk. But we're telling you this so that hopefully it'll help you stop and be like, whoa, we need a dinghy checklist. Or, wow, this is something we need to consider. Or everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Or just don't be like, just, even if you feel like you're super comfortable, like, it's like when you go diving, like, you check all your gear.
Exactly.
You don't jump in and be like, oh, I might have forgot my octo. It's not hooked up.
Yeah. So, yeah. That's why we're sharing this with you. Not because it's fun. Not because it makes me look cool.
I look a little cool.
She looks pretty cool. But that's reality. That's what happened. And we hope that it helps you think through some situations that you might be getting yourself into. Or even, maybe it'll even like, you'll just, you'll be like, oh, yeah, we don't want to get in that situation. So you never encounter that situation, even not knowing you would have, had you not seen this video.
Yeah.
So hopefully it just like, either, lets you know that these are things that happen to us and that you should consider, or it reaffirms to you that you being like overly precautious about your checklists, about your gear, that you're correct in doing that. So that's pretty much like all the footage we have from San Miguel because we lost our footage
Yeah.
in the GoPro. So this is the San Miguel video, and we did not go back ashore, obviously. You'll see the recon footage and stuff in the next episode and everything after that, which it's all shot on our Canon DSLR, which we're shooting with right now, which isn't great, but it's all we have to bring you footage with. So, cheating death at San Miguel Island.
Love you.
Love you. Thank you. Thanks for watching. If this helped you, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to our channel if you want to see all of our episodes. And, yeah. Don't drown. Fair winds until next time. We now have a tracker for Tritea supplied by PredictWind. If you'd like to check out the blog post we made in real time while we're sailing the Channel Islands, visit the link on the screen or click the link down in the description.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, please give us a like, subscribe, and leave us a comment. It helps us a lot.
Thanks again to all of our patrons. Your contributions help us get the boat ready for big things.
Until next time.